Well, we use the future simple to describe an action in the future. Okay, so let's look at the structure. So I will go, you will go, he, she, it will go, we will go, you will go, and they will go. So if we look at this in a bit more detail, then this is what we see. So we can see that the future simple tense is made up of the subject followed by the word will, which is then followed by the verb. Okay, so for example, I will go. I is the subject, will, and then the verb. Now, we can also use the word shall. And the word shall, we can use it instead of will. And it has the same meaning. So, for example, we can say instead of I will, we can say I shall go. So I will go and I shall go. It is the same. So you shall go, etc., etc. However, the word shall is used more in British English, and we don't really use it much in American English. Okay, so that is important. And even in British English, shall is less common than the word will. So will is much more common than shall. But they do have the same meaning. So we'll look at now the negative form. So in the negative we have I will not read, you will not read, he, she, it will not read, we will not read, you will not read, and they will not read. So to form the negative, we simply add the word not after the word will and before the verb. And now the question form. Will I read? Will you read? Will he, she, it read? Will we read? Will you read? And will they read? So, to form the question, we change the order of the words. So you can see in the affirmative, we go from I will read, and we swap the subject with the word will, which makes will I read. You will read, will you read? And we do the same for all of them. Okay. Contracted forms. I'll read, you'll read, he'll read, she'll read, it'll read, we'll read, you'll read, they'll read. So we use the contracted forms usually for spoken English. So when we speak, we don't really write these, but this is how we would spell it if we write it. Okay? And for shall, there is no contracted form, in fact. So, for example, I shall read, it stays the same. There is no contracted form, so it would always be I shall read. Now, let's look at the contracted form for the negative. I won't read. You won't read. He won't, she won't, or it won't read. We won't read. You won't read. And they won't read. So the spelling here is important. So will not is transformed into won't. W-O-N apostrophe T. And that is the same for all of them. Okay? And for shall, well, in the negative, shall not becomes shan't. And we spell that S-H-A-N apostrophe T. Okay? And the meaning is the same. So, for example, I won't read is the same meaning as I shan't read. So here is an example. The first example, I shall not read becomes I shan't read. Okay, let's carry on. Now let's look at the uses. When do we use the future simple? Well, the first use is when we want to offer to do something. For example, Sarah says, the telephone is ringing, and David says, I'll answer it. So David is offering to do something. He is offering to answer the telephone. So we use the future simple. Sarah says, I'm really tired. I'm falling asleep. And David says, I'll make you a coffee. Again, David is offering to do something. He's offering to make a coffee. And so we use the future simple. The opposite of offering to do something is to refuse to do something. And to refuse to do something, we use the negative of the future simple. For example, I won't do the washing up by myself. No, I will not help you with your homework. So here we are refusing to do the washing up. So we use the future simple. And this is the contracted form. And this is the full form. But both with the same meaning. It's the future. And we are refusing. We can also use the future simple as a promise or a threat. So if you help me cook dinner, I will do the washing up. So this is a promise. If you do this, then I promise to do that. Future simple. Stop doing that or I'll call the police. So this is a threat. If you do not do this, then I will do that. So this is again the future simple. A very common use is requests or orders. So asking somebody to do a service for us. For example, will you buy me a drink, please? So this is a request. We are asking somebody to do something for us. Will you? And will you help me carry my bags? Again, we are asking somebody to help us. It is a request. So we use will you. So this is the question form. The question form. And here, as a request, we can only use the word will. Okay? We cannot use the word shall for this. This will only work if we use the word will in a question. Okay? So this is very common. This is a very common use. Predictions. So a prediction is when we say what we think will happen in the future. For example, I think Liverpool will beat Manchester United. Okay, so we think that something will happen in the future. I think that a new window will cost £500. So again, this is talking about the future. Now, we use the future simple to predict the future when we aren't completely certain, when we aren't really sure of the future. Okay? So we're not certain, but we think that this is the situation. Okay? So this is the future symbol here, will cost. So, but if we are certain, if we are sure about something, then we use a different future tense. We use the going to future. So, for example, the same example, the builder called with the cost of a new window. It is going to cost £600. Okay? So, do you see the difference? Here, now, we now have more information about the window because the builder has called us and he has given us a fixed price. So now we can say it is going to cost £600. We know it now. It is now a fact. So we do not use the future simple. Okay? The meaning is very similar between the two. Both are talking about the future, but there is a difference in the meaning. With the future simple, we are less certain. And we can use the word shall to suggest something, to make a suggestion. This is only with the word shall. We cannot do this with the word will. So here we can see that there is a door which is open. And we can suggest to close the door by saying, shall I close the door? We are suggesting it. Or we might say to our husband or to our wife, shall we go out for a meal? It is a suggestion to go to a restaurant for a meal. So when we use the word shall in the question form, this is a suggestion. But remember, shall is only really used in British English. So this use doesn't really exist in American English. So that's quite important to remember. And finally, there is an important rule. If we use a time expression at the beginning of a clause, then we do not use the future simple. We must only use the present simple. Let me give you an example to explain. So, for example, this sentence, when I will arrive at the cinema, I will call you, that is wrong. Okay? And this is the part which is wrong. Here we have used the future simple, I will arrive, and that is wrong. Okay? This is what we should say. When I arrive at the cinema, I'll call you. That is the correct way of saying it. Because now we have used the present simple. I arrive. So when I arrive at the cinema, I'll call you. So even though we are talking about the future here, this is talking about the future, but because we have started the clause with a time expression, like the word when, then we must use the present simple to talk about the future. So this is a time expression, and there are a few others, and here is a list of the common time expressions. So when, while, before, after, by the time, as soon as, if, unless, etc. So whenever we have a time clause which starts with one of these words and we are talking about the future, then in fact we must use the present simple. We must not use the future simple. Okay? So let's do some exercises. I would like you to put the verbs in brackets in the correct form using the future simple, and do not use the contracted form. Example. So I want you to put the verb wear, in the future simple. And the answer is, he will wear his grey suit at the party. Okay? So there are two questions. Question 1. So I'll just give you a few seconds to think of the answer. Okay, so I'm going to give you the answer now. I think it will rain tomorrow. The future simple. Question 2. If you vote for me, I something income tax. Again, I will give you just a few seconds, 5 seconds, to think of the answer. And the answer is, if you vote for me, I will reduce income tax. So this is a promise, in fact. Okay? And this one was a prediction. Exercise 2. This time I want you to put the verb in the question form. Example, and the answer here is, will you pass the salt please? Question 1. And the answer here is, will you clean the kitchen please? Question 2. And the answer is, will you answer the telephone please? Okay, so again here we reverse. This is remembering the order, the order of the words to make a question. And the last exercise is, this time I would like you to use the negative, and also the negative using the contracted form. Example. So here the answer is, she won't dance at the disco on Saturday. So question 1. And the answer is, I won't cheat in my English exam. The last question. And the answer here is, my parents won't buy a new car. Okay, so these are all refusals, if you remember, refusals. So will not becomes won't. W-O-N apostrophe T.
Welcome to English Grammar Spot. This tutorial is about the future tenses. In this lesson I'm going to show you how to form a future tense and when to use a future tense. Take a look at these sentences. I will help you carry those bags. She's going to work tomorrow. She's flying to London next week. The bus leaves at 6 o'clock. The prices are about to go up, and by this time tomorrow he will be lying on a beach. All of these sentences are in the future tense, but as you can see there's quite some variation. The most commonly used future tenses are shall and will plus the base form of the verb, to be going to plus the base form of the verb, the present continuous, the present simple, to be about to and the base form of the verb, and the future continuous. Let's look at shall and will plus the base form of the verb. We use this form for things decided on the spot. They are not fixed agreements and they are not very likely to follow through. We need to pay extra attention to shall because we only use shall in questions with I and we. Shall I help you with that? And shall we go for a swim? We use will in all other situations. I will take the bus, you will listen to me, we will make dinner, and they will drop by. Let's look at questions with will. Again, we use the base form of the verb. Will he put up his tent? Will she celebrate her birthday? Will you park your bikes in the shed? Let's look at negations with will. We use will and add not, contracting it into won't and the base form of the verb. Now I've also included shall. Shall plus not becomes shan't and the base form of the verb. But this form is very old-fashioned, but I thought it would be fun to put it in anyway. Shan't I get sunburned? It's quite Victorian. You won't cross the road. It won't be easy. We won't make the beds. And they won't need a passport. Now let's take a look at that other form, to be plus going to plus the verb. We use this form for fixed plans made for the future. We need to know when it's going to happen, so we need to have some kind of time indication. I'm going to help my brother next week. It is going to rain tomorrow, and we are going to cook dinner tonight. They are going to mark the test in an hour. It's quite likely that these plans will follow through. Let's look at the questions. Am I going to pass my exams this afternoon? Is she going to visit her aunt soon? Are they going to run the marathon next week? And let's have a look at the negations. I'm not going to learn it by heart this evening. He isn't going to buy a new computer on Tuesday. They aren't going to watch the telly this night. Now sometimes we also use a present continuous when talking about the future. We use the present continuous for plans in the very near future, and again we need to know when they are happening. I'm working this afternoon. He's calling her in the morning. And we are driving down the street any minute now. Sometimes we also use a present simple for the future, especially for fixed schedules. The lesson starts at 8:30. The bus arrives at 10 o'clock. The train departs from platform B. Another form to talk about the future is to use to be about to plus the base form of the verb. We use this form when you are on the verge of doing something. You use this form for something that can happen at any minute from now. The lesson is about to begin. The airplane is about to take off, and they are about to open the department store. A final form is the future continuous, and this is quite a tricky one. We use the future continuous when you tell someone about your future plans, something that you will be doing at a specific time in the future. We use shall and will. We use the infinitive of the verb to be, or the base form of the verb to be. We use the base form of a regular verb and ing. For example, by this time next year, I will be working at the head office. And no, they can't help you tomorrow. They will be doing